Well, hello, I'm Doug Apple, back with another special interview for you today, and we're going to be talking about marijuana. Yes, that's right. I remember many years ago seeing this public service announcement on television, and it showed two young men apparently stoned on pot, sitting in an attic and giggling at nonsense. And meanwhile, one of the boys' mother is yelling at him from downstairs. And the one boy says something like, "I don't know why mom's so upset and why she doesn't like us smoking pot. Pot never made me do anything." Well, the whole point of that public service announcement was that marijuana would make you lethargic or make you not feel motivated, or you didn't want to do anything, like your responsibilities, for example. But we're in a different world today. We're going to talk with Mike Sharman a little bit about this. Also, there was a recent editorial from the New York Times that we're going to talk about. And the headline in that New York Times editorial said, "It's time for America to admit that it has a marijuana problem." And that headline shocked me, coming from the New York Times, that is. We're on the phone line with Mike Sharman. He is with Share Healthcare. He's their general counsel and also knows all about Christian healthcare sharing ministries like Share Healthcare. But marijuana comes into play here, and it seems like it's always a hot topic, Mike. So talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on marijuana legalization, this New York Times editorial, etc.
Well, thank you, Doug. You know, it is ironic the New York Times is doing an editorial against marijuana because they, in their editorial push, have been for decades one of the main reasons it's been legalized. Mm-hmm. And, you know, to their credit, let's say, they do admit that in the first paragraph of their opinion piece. But way toward the end of the article, they point out one of the big problems. They say in 1995, the marijuana seized by the Drug Enforcement Administration was around 4% THC, the primary psychoactive compound in pot. Today, they continue, you can buy marijuana products with THC levels of 90% or more. It is as if the beer brands were still sold as beer, but contained as much alcohol per ounce as whiskey. And so that is their some conclusion on it, but that's even more than just if it's beer turned into whiskey. I mean, going from 4% THC to 90% THC, it has massive problems, and there's massive amounts of people that are doing it, as the New York Times article points out. They point out that 18 million people in the U.S. use marijuana daily. 18 million people in the U.S. use it. Well, they say 5 times a week, so almost daily. Mm-hmm.
Got to go to church, you know.
Yeah. Well, you never know what's going on, but that's it used to be that very, very few states had it legal. Mm-hmm. Now most states do. So we're having these problems spread across the nation. Ben Carson had written a number of articles on it. And one he pointed out, he said the University of Colorado study found crime rates up 1,452% higher in neighborhoods with at least one marijuana dispensary. So obviously this is in a state like Colorado where marijuana is illegal. Mm-hmm. And so then Ben Carson in his article said, well, it's not just Colorado. He went on to point out that a comprehensive review of all the states with legal marijuana said that post-legalization, substance use disorders, chronic homelessness, arrests increased by 17%, 35%, 13%, respectively. The violent crime increased, property crime increased. The one interesting thing, you know, you use that old ad, which has the old premise that, well, dope just makes you dopey. Mm-hmm. Well, no. Ben Carson points out that there's a study that showed that young men who used marijuana daily were 82% more likely to exhibit violent behavior compared to non-user. Well, that's just not sitting around on your couch playing video games. That's, mm-hmm. Being violent. Marijuana has health problems, which is, you mentioned I'm with Share Healthcare. With Share Healthcare, we are able, since we're not insurance and we're not under the Affordable Care Act, so we don't have the mandates of insurance regulations, we don't have the mandate of Affordable Care Act, We're just a simple tool that Christians across the nation and around the world can use to share their medically necessary medical expenses. Okay, whether marijuana is legal or not, that's not medically, we are not going to assist them with those medical expenses, because we also are able, since we're not insurance and we're not under the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and we are a 501c3 nonprofit, a Christian ministry, we're able to say we are only going to share those things, those medical expenses that God would want us to, that are clear in the Bible. And he does not want us to be messing up the temple. He doesn't want us to be destroying ourselves. He wants us to have a sound mind. Does that strike a biblical chord with a few people out there?
I want to bring this up and compare that to the phrase you used earlier, psychoactive drug.
Correct. And it is. But it's not only a problem for our mental health, it's a problem for our physical health. A very large study found that marijuana use has a doubling of the rate of heart disease, raises the risk of strokes, raises the risk of lung cancer, raises the risk of heart attacks. Those who use cannabis, use marijuana, had double the risk of dying from cardiovascular disease. They had a 1/3 higher risk for a problem with heart, acute coronary syndromes, a 20% higher risk of stroke. And this is from a study that got the medical data from 200 million people. So it's not just a small little group. They really have, this is what's called a vigorous research here. They found that for the first time ever, daily marijuana users outnumber daily drinkers.
Wow.
Yeah. 69% of the people aged 18 to 24 said they prefer marijuana to alcohol. And it creates more problems. I mean, alcohol, we know, is the greatest health risk, is the second greatest health risk. Tobacco is the first. But alcohol is in that top two of greatest health risks to people, which is another reason why, since we exclude users of marijuana, whether it's legal or not, we exclude those from being able to be members of Share Healthcare. And sure, that limits our number because, as we just read, a ton of people use marijuana. But it also is one of the explanations why we're so much more affordable. We're $149 for a single, $249 for a couple per month, and $349 for a family of four. So that this issue of we're looking to do things that are biblical and help Christians with their medically necessary expenses. And this explains one more reason why we're so much more affordable. The authors of that study that I just mentioned they're looking at what is good for the health of the country, and they said it needs to be treated at least like tobacco, criminalized and discouraged. The widespread nose is that it should not be treated just as any other. It shouldn't be treated as a wine or a beer. It's an addictive drug. The university in Denmark that did a big study, and that marijuana has been used in Denmark for a very long time and legalized there. They found that 41% of the users have developed major psychological problems like depression. They found that the chronic marijuana use, remember this daily use or frequent use, quadrupled the risk of developing bipolar disorder, created a rise in psychotic breaks, a rise in deaths by suicide, and a rise of 30% of the cases of schizophrenia. So let's back up there. Pot's linked with 30% of the cases of schizophrenia. There's nothing good that is coming out of this, and yet it still is continued to be legalized, promoted. One of the things that really struck me in reading these articles on it is that marijuana is not taxed at the federal level. And yet it's a $30 billion industry. Tobacco is taxed federally as state. Alcohol is taxed federally and state. Marijuana is not.
Well, that's one of the things we call a sin tax that supposedly helps jack up the price to discourage usage.
Yes, and we need to do that. At a minimum, we need to do that.
Yeah.
But what, the emphasis that I want people to take out of this is that we can't control the things we can't control, but we should control those things we can. And what a individual Christian, a Christian couple, or a Christian family can control is don't support the things that God would not want us to support. And we wouldn't want somebody to be able to get a prescription for marijuana and we pay for it. We wouldn't want to encourage people that, the problems you have from marijuana are just the same problems everybody else has. No, that's not true. And so you can, as an individual or a couple or a family, you can pull out of that whole system and you can join a healthcare sharing ministry like Share Healthcare. And in doing it, you help yourself because it's just much more pleasant to be in a healthcare sharing ministry than it is to be in insurance or one of the government health exchanges. But it's vastly more affordable. We just mentioned $149 for a single, $249 for a couple, $349 for a family of four. And you're only supporting those things that you would want to. Helping people with the problems that are all the health problems that are going to fall on the just and the unjust. The accidents that befall all of us every now and then, and the births that are the good celebration type things that we would want to be paying for. And that's what we would want to be sharing with how we would want to be using our healthcare dollars.
Yeah, and I'm looking here in Florida right now. Now, we had a ballot initiative in the last election cycle, and it didn't pass to legalize recreational use of marijuana. It did have over a majority, though, like a 56%, and it needed a supermajority of 60% here in Florida to pass a ballot initiative and make it part of the Constitution. I'm thinking that articles like this from the New York Times, where people are starting to waffle a little bit away from a full-throated support of marijuana, that it's going to take that edge off. And there's some people that were in the mushy middle will be like, oh, sure, I'll sign your petition. Oh, sure, I'll vote for legalized marijuana. Why not give it to them? Where now some of those in the mushy middle will be thinking, hey, I don't know if this is very good for people. I'm expecting that some of this rush to legalize is going to diminish. What do you think?
Well, I think it's a $30 billion industry, and they're going to want it to be a $60 billion industry.
Yeah, there's that.
Everybody knows gambling is not healthy. Yeah. And yet gambling interests push and push and push and push on and on and on. But what we do want to be doing is putting the truth out there as much as possible. And, the Christian vote, the pro-life vote, those are very strong segments of our electorate. And we need to be shaping the policy, not just reacting to the policy other people shape. If you're a pro-life voter, you really need to know that pregnant women who use marijuana have a 70% higher risk of birth defects, which is going to have long-lasting consequences for that child and for the society. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be 230% more likely to have a stillbirth. A pro-life voter cannot vote to expand the use of marijuana if that's what it's going to do. Prenatal cannabis exposure has attention, social, and behavioral problems for the child that then go on at least into early adolescence. So, which of course is shaping their early learning, their early development, which of course then affects their adult life. It is not good. And we need to vote that way. And we need to associate ourselves with those who agree with that premise that it's not healthy to be using marijuana, and we don't want to accommodate it. We don't want to enable it, which is, again, why I'm encouraging people pull out of those systems that do encourage and enable it and join a healthcare sharing ministry. And the one I would suggest is the one I'm with, Share Healthcare.
Well, as we wrap up our time today, Mike, I was reading an article out of Boston, and it was talking about a health clinic that I think was especially for children. And it mentioned that one of the reasons this health clinic was popular was because they could keep prices lower by people donating. They had financial donors, financial supporters for this particular clinic. And now the article was saying that nobody should have to donate, that it basically all should be the government. But of course, that's also a form of donation. But I like what you talk about share healthcare being a separate system entirely.
Well, it is. We know in our Sunday schools and our churches, we talk about a biblical worldview and a secular worldview, or a biblical way of dealing with things and a humanist way of dealing with things. They are different systems, and they're ruled by different rulers. We're ruled by Yahweh and by Christ. We're ruled by God the Father and God the Son and the Holy Spirit. And the other system is ruled by Satan. I mean, it's just really clear that's true. A lot of people don't know the drug connection with that. In Scripture, when we read the word witchcraft in Scripture, when it says, don't have witchcraft and this, that, and the other is witchcraft. Well, that word is pharmacopoeia, drugs, because the witches of the old times and even the witches in most of the pagan countries now use drugs to change and alter the mind and make it more susceptible for the satanic influences to come in. And we don't have to get real spiritual to figure that out. We know if people are drinking heavy, if they're using marijuana, their inhibitions are going to be reduced, and they're going to do things they wouldn't do if they were sober.
Yeah. So remind folks once again, as we wrap up our time, about Share Healthcare and what they can do to find more information.
Well, remember our name, Share Healthcare, and then look at our website, sharehealthcare.com, sharehealthcare.com. Look that over, write out your questions that you get from that, and then call 1-844-SHARE-HC, 1-844-SHARE-HC. Call during business hours and you'll get a real life human. Call after hours, leave a message, and a real life human will call you back the next day.
And in this day and age, we do have to say real life human.
Right. I mean, it always frustrates me when I call something and I get, a robot telling me I have 4 choices and they tell me what they are. Then you hit the one choice you want. And then it's a different robot telling you basically, don't bother asking us. We really don't want to know.
Yeah. Well, that's not what you're going to run into when you call 1-844-SHARE-HC for Share Healthcare, or their website, sharehealthcare.com. That's Mike Sharman. And for Wave 94, I'm Doug Apple.